Good afternoon. It is 4 p.m. and we are back from break to start our next public hearing on the 2022 through 2023 biennial midterm budget revenue to support the budget. And I'm handing this back to Robin Campbell, our Assistant County Manager, to report on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this afternoon, we are conducting a public hearing on the proposed revenue and property tax levies that support the budget. And this is more of a typical type of public hearing where I will give you an overview of the many funds in the county budget and the revenues that support them, and then open it up to the typical 4-minute comment period for the public to comment on this. This is not like the budget hearing where there's a Q&A section. So the county budget process overall. Why is mine not working? There we go. So state law, of course, governs the county budget process, and there are a whole lot of steps required. You're required to hold public hearings on the budget, and the public hearing, even though the law says that it shall be conducted in October, it also gives you an alternative to conduct the public hearings in December, and that's what Thurston County is doing. There's a requirement for you, the legislative body in the county, to determine each item in the budget and adopt it by resolution. So we're in the process and working our way toward that. And the law also requires the Board of County Commissioners to fix the amount of the levies. Before you can do that, you are required to hold a public hearing on the revenue sources that support the budget, including consideration of increases in the property tax revenue. And you are then required to certify the property tax levies to the assessor no later than December 15th. So that is the framework, and it's prescriptive in the process and the order that the steps are taken. I find it interesting that you are required to adopt the budget and then set the levy, but that is because the budget laws were, for the most part, written in 1963, and there have been a lot of changes since that time. But originally, the board would set a budget and then raise the property tax levy to the amount necessary to support the budget. And that's why it's in that order. With the 1% cap, it doesn't work that way anymore, but we're still governed by the order in the law. This is the overview. You've seen it a few times now, so I won't spend any time on it. We will get into some examples of the types of revenue that the county collects. Taxes, there's the big property tax, and you'll see on the slides that that is the majority of the tax collected by the county. Sales and use tax, and then there are special revenue taxes like the treatment sales tax. We have charges for services. One of the big ones that I couldn't even think of earlier is for solid waste or garbage disposal, also called the tipping fee. And then there are internal service charges for things like financial services that are billed to other offices and departments. Intergovernmental revenues are, for the most part, grants from federal and state agencies, and then we also have some what's called revenue sharing with the state of Washington, where we share profits on liquor and marijuana. Licenses and permits, fines and forfeits all come in to the county, so things like marriage licenses, vehicle licenses, construction permits, court fines are all examples of these. And then there is miscellaneous revenue. Some of it can be substantial, like the interest earned when the treasurer invests our funds. And then there are also transfers between funds. For example, the road construction fund receives money from the roads account where the property tax is initially deposited. So we can transfer money to some extent between funds for related purposes. Looking at an overview of all revenue, we anticipate total revenue for the operating budget to be $457 million in '22, and we expect that amount to go down pretty substantially to $398 million in '23, and the big drop you'll see is in the intergovernmental revenue, and that is tied to the COVID money that we've received. It's going to end at some point. It's still coming in quite high, but it's going to end. Looking at the major funds in the county, starting with the Road and Transportation Fund. This fund is mainly funded by taxes. The largest share is the property tax. There are also intergovernmental funds from agencies like the County Road Administration Board. Those are the major sources of revenue. Revenue in this fund is anticipated at roughly $31 million a year, and the planned expenditures in this budget are also roughly $30 million a year. Stop me at any point. The Solid Waste Fund, another one of the major funds in a county. It's got a substantial fund balance. The main revenue source for the Solid Waste Fund are tipping fees. They are in the charges for goods and services category. 29, almost 30 million a year in revenue, mainly from tipping fees. So the solid waste business is booming. Our Medic One Fund, the major source of funding for Medic One is property tax. I'll talk more about this in the property levy section, but recall that voters approved a lid lift for the Medic One property tax, and that increase is allowed at up to 7% per year for the next 6 years. So we're in year 2 of the lid lift.
Robin, you said I could stop you? Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to ask, so it's been hard for me to track the budget growth because we had this COVID, you know. I mean, it was increasing, but it was increasing by this artificial amount. So if I look at 2023 and I see 398, does that reflect basically a removal of all of COVID sources of funding, COVID related?
Coming in, yeah, revenue coming in.
So,
yes.
So now with that number, I can look back to when I first got on the board, and I think it was like 311 or something like that we were looking at. That's what I want to say.
Yeah.
So I put in, I just subtracted out, you know, $87 million increase from the, let's say the 4 years I've been on the board, and that's about a 21, calculating that's 21, 22%. So if my math is back of the napkin math there is right, is that reflective of increased sales tax revenue? Is it, or is there something that you can point to? You just mentioned tipping fees being, you know, higher, and I'm just wondering if at a high level, is there something you can point to go, that's why we've got 22% more revenue than we had 4 years ago?
Well, I'd want to, yeah, at a really high level, it's kind of hard because, as you can see, there's a lot of puts and takes.
Sure.
And so this backs out most the COVID revenue, but there's still some anticipated to come in from the state. So it doesn't back it all out. So this still could be artificially high. And there are some new things, property tax growth, especially with the levy lift in Medic 1, that contributed to a higher than normal growth. The board enacted the sales tax to pay for affordable housing. That reflects growth that we would not have otherwise seen.
Foundational public health.
Yeah, the grant money from Foundational Public Health is a huge lift. There's other money that we have lost in that time, though, such as the city county assistance money from the state of Washington. That was about $1 million a year that just one day they determined Thurston County didn't need it anymore. And that payment was taken away. So there are a lot of things that went up and down. I'd want to look back over those 4 years and see, but those are just a few big things off the top.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Yes, sir.
Maybe just follow. Do you have your microphone on?
Oh, microphone, sir.
Yes. How about now? Okay. If you went back to page 3, and you went down, say, just using 23 for revenue and expenditures, all the way down, general fund, special revenues, debt, bonds, all that, it's 12 million more, 50 million more, 1 million less, 16 million more, 14 million more, 1 million more, 93 million more total. And that's the difference between the expenditure and the revenue. I guess special revenue funds, 50 million, that maybe is the bond thing or something? Is that, you're gonna account for that 50 million? It's such a drastic amount on all of them that it makes me cringe, I guess. And I know you're having a hard time explaining, dividing it all out, but okay, if you went down to I don't know if it'd be easier to go to the bottom line, $93 million more in expenditures than revenue, or 12 million up on top between general fund, between revenue and expenditures. I'm just trying to get a sense about it.
So the special revenue funds are restricted type funds. So our public health fund, where we received, and our social services fund, where we received massive amounts of emergency assistance and COVID funding. The COVID fund, 56 million, just boom. That kind of revenue is one time and isn't going to come again.
I guess, could I just say though, okay, so that's revenue, but we're expending 196, and our revenue is only 146.
Yeah, that's because we built up the fund balances, and that's what you don't see on this page, is we have significant fund balances in these funds. The COVID fund has currently a $35 million fund balance, and we have to spend that money. So we are spending down fund balance in a lot of circumstances and in a very planned way. When you look at the forecast for the general fund, that's one of the things that the board is doing in a very thoughtful and planned way, is bringing that fund balance down to a point that's sustainable and still fiscally responsible, but we are spending down fund balance. And that's exactly what we're doing in the special revenue funds, in the capital project funds. We have a lot of fund balance in these funds. We need to use it.
Okay.
Because I would suggest to you that when we collect taxpayer money, we don't do it to put it in our bank account. We do it to provide programs that provide benefits to the citizens of the county. So we've accumulated a lot in these accounts, and it's time to spend it down.
Oh, okay.
All right. Okay. So I think I was on Medic 1. That's slide 9. As I was saying, Medic One has a property tax lid lift. So you see the taxes amount go up substantially, and that we wouldn't see that otherwise had the voters not approved the levy lift. Going on to conservation futures. Conservation futures is supported almost exclusively by property tax. That little bit of other money, it comes in on timber revenue. They get a piece of the timber sales in this fund and also interest earnings. The anticipated revenue is 1.6 million in each year, and the operating expenditures, again, this fund has a substantial fund balance that the board saved up to be able to address the habitat conservation plan needs. Now that we have a plan, we're purchasing land, and that's why we're spending significantly more than the revenue that we're bringing in. So this is just one example of that. Public Health Fund, there is some amount, the taxes that go into this fund are property tax, but they also have charges for goods and services, generates a small amount of revenue, but the big revenue in public health is intergovernmental, and that is federal and state grant funding. Again, you see it's quite high in 2022. Again, we continue to address COVID. It starts to drop off in 23. The operating revenue this year anticipated to be about 27 million, spending about the same amount, and next year, or rather just under 21 million, and we will spend 24, again, bringing down fund balance in this fund. Housing and Community Renewal Fund, this is mainly housing. The taxes here for the most part are the sales tax. There's a small amount of property tax that goes into this fund. It's diverted from the general fund. Their main source of revenue, again, intergovernmental. You see the huge amount that was for emergency housing and rental assistance. We anticipate that that will not continue past this year, but if we do get more money in, we will be coming to you for budget amendments to be able to spend that money. This year, we anticipate 38 million in revenue, 23 million next year in revenue, and the operating expenditures just slightly less than that amount this year and a little more next year, and they pretty much balance out between the years.
Can I ask a question on that? Do any of the other commissioners have questions on this? I was wondering, just as the home fund starts operating through, why we wouldn't see an increase on the revenue.
You see the increase in the taxes.
Okay, so that's where the
See it go up, that's the home fund, half a year this year, and next year will be a whole year. Yep, it's kicking in.
And so the intergovernmental is just the grant.
That's the state and federal money coming through.
But that is, so currently we have 8 million. This year, what I saw is as the year was going through, Department of Commerce allotted us more of the funding. So that is something that can happen next year as well. As we go through the year, I qualify for, I just realized I don't have my microphone on. I apologize. I've been talking without my microphone. So I guess I'll repeat. My first question was in regards to the home fund and the change in revenue from 2022 through 2023. Robin gave an answer to that. And then I was asking in regards to the intergovernmental funding and if that funding included this year the 27 million compared to the 8 million, just funding that we've gotten throughout the year when Department of Commerce has sometimes extended our contracts and given us additional funding for rent assistance and other programs. So that
That's
can be a possibility next year as well.
Right. And then I
you.
think that the recording fees that we collect and use for housing is the charges for goods and services. Those are recording fees, I believe. I think that that's right.
And if I may, also in intergovernmental, you will be considering a new local agreement with the City of Olympia next Tuesday related to the home fund. So you will see an additional uptick on intergovernmental coming up on that as well.
All right. The next is our Storm and Surface Water Utility Fund. It is not paid with property taxes. Instead, the entire fund. There is a small amount for charges for goods and services, but I believe that the other revenue includes the stormwater assessment that people pay along with their property taxes each year. $7 million per year in anticipated revenue, $8 million per year in expenditures, because that fund also has a substantial fund balance. The Environmental Health Fund, this is a relatively new fund. We split it out of the Public Health Fund to be able to better account for it because it is restricted and it is considered an enterprise fund, because the main source of revenue for this fund are permit fees, charges for goods and services, and things like charges for food inspections and food licenses, and then intergovernmental are grants that come into this fund. So the total revenue anticipated for environmental health is $6.7 million in each year. Operating expenditures, $7.2 million in 22, $7.8 million in 23. Part of those intergovernmental costs are for foundational public health. We'll put part of that grant money into this fund to be able to fund some of the initiatives that the board has in this budget. Treatment sales tax has one single revenue source, and that is the sales tax. This fund collects a sales tax of, it's a penny on $10. So 0.1%, yeah, 1/10 of 1%, which we anticipate will generate $8.6 million in the next 2 years. It is a substantial amount. When I started with the county in 2010, it was generating about $4 million a year. So that is an example of the extreme growth in sales tax. And we anticipate this fund also has a substantial fund balance. As you know, there is a high rate of reversion of the appropriations that the board approves. So we are trying to spend the fund balance down. The expenditures are a little over $10 million in 22, just under $11 million in 23. The next fund is detention sales tax. It is also a 1/10 of 1%. You'll note that the amount of the tax is not exactly the same as treatment sales tax. At least I don't think it is. It's not. And that's because there are a variety of things in each of these taxes that are excluded from collection, and they're different. And I couldn't tell you exactly what they are in this moment, but we could get you that information. But they're slightly different, even though it's the same rate. The total operating revenue is still $8.6 million a year for detention sales tax. Again, we are spending down fund balance in that fund, $10 million in 22, $10.4 million in 23. the Land Use Permitting Fund, as we've been talking about the challenges in this fund. The license and permits and charges for goods and services are the main sources of revenue into this fund. There will be a transfer as approved in this budget to shore up the fund balance. The operating revenue anticipated in 2022 is $5.5 million, with expenditures projected at $4.8 million this year. Next year, current revenue projections are $3.8 million. Expenditures pretty flat at $4.8 million. And this is one of the funds that we will be paying close attention to ensure that it is a stable fund.
I have, so this is the fund that we are transferring, is it $1 million this year and $1 million next year?
700,000 this year and $1 million next year.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So we will be working very closely with their team as we go forward through the year. Then there's the big one, it's the general fund. This is, of course, the most flexible fund for the board and can be used for any county purpose. The main source of revenue is taxes. About 42% of the revenue into the general fund is from property tax. Another 15% roughly is from sales tax. Then you have a wide variety of funds that come into this, and it goes down to a few dollars on some of the revenue lines, but we look at well over 300 discrete revenue lines that come into the general fund. Licenses and permits are part of this. Those are the things like the marriage licenses and the auto licenses. Charges for goods and services include things like, the candidate filing fee goes into this fund. So just little things like that. And that doesn't generate a lot of revenue, but it is one of the many streams. And again, wide range in the amount on any given revenue stream. Intergovernmental, these are grants, again, from state and federal government, as well as the revenue sharing for liquor and marijuana are the major two sources of revenue sharing. Other financing sources is a small part of this fund. And then all other includes things like the interest revenue, which is substantial, well over $1 million in any given year. The total operating revenue anticipated is a very interesting number because as you can see between the years, we did adjust all of these items, all of the many items in the general fund, and yet we are anticipating that the total revenue is pretty flat at just over $117 million a year. As we were talking about earlier, the general fund has a substantial fund balance, so we'll look at that in a moment, and you are planning to spend that down. Operating expenditures in 2022 budgeted at $123.6 million, and in 2023, the proposed budget is $129.5 million. Here's the forecast. You see in 2022, the actual fund balance in the general fund was literally off the chart.
Adjust your slide.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jamie. So the bars are fund balance. The red slashed line going up is expenditures, and the green dotted line going up is the revenue. And what you see in 21, 22, 23, and 24, we anticipate revenue to be pretty darn flat at right around 117 million a year. Keep going? Okay.
Yep.
All right. At the same time, expenditures are taking a sharp increase. A lot of that is one-time funding in 2023, and it'll come back down in 2024. And the growth in revenue is anticipated to be greater than the growth in expenditures at this time, which means that when we look out to 2030, you should have a fund balance of roughly 2 months of a general fund reserve in this fund. So, and that's the plan. Overall, in the general fund, as I said, the biggest source is property tax, 45.4 million this year, 46.2 million budgeted next year. Sales tax, 26.5, or just under 27 million this year. We are on track for our collections at a 5%. Actually, well, I'll talk about sales tax in a minute, but it's coming in. And we assumed a 5% growth rate for 27 million next year, and then all other is pretty darn flat. Absolutely flat when it comes to the taxes. Here's the sales tax revenue. This goes all the way back to 2006. You see, this is nominal amounts. It's very, very flat through 2012. It starts to have an upward trend in 2015, and the growth has just accelerated since then. And we are collecting over $2 million a month in most months at this point in time in sales tax. And here's the year-over-year change. This is what I was starting to say. Earlier in this year, we saw a significant slowdown in the trend in sales tax collections, but going back to 2006, you see year-over-year growth at roughly 10%, which is very robust. Then you see the negative growth throughout the Great Recession. It starts to come back in 2012. It's negative growth again and kind of bouncing around a little. And then it kind of hits its stride in 2014, where we are collecting roughly 10%, almost 10% per year. You see in early 2020, the quick dip, the V-shaped dip that was due to COVID, that everyone thought would be the long-term off a cliff, and it wasn't. Then extreme rebound growth in 21, and now through 22, year to date, the month of November compared to last November was 9% growth, and year to date, we are just over 6% growth in sales tax. So our sales tax is actually coming in, while not the 10% that we had hoped for when we enacted this year's budget, it is coming in according to the more recent forecasts. Questions about sales tax?
Questions, commissioners?
No questions.
Okay. Nope.
All right. Moving on specifically to talk about the property tax levy. The levy increase is restricted by state law. The Board of County Commissioners can raise the property tax levy up to 1%, or the IPD, that is the
Implicit price deflator.
Implicit price deflator, which is just another form of estimating inflation. I have no idea why the state did not use consumer price index, but they didn't. They used this a little bit more obscure measure. So you can use the increase for whichever is more. And the IPD, oh, and there it's spelled out right there on the next bullet. This year, it's almost 6.5%. So we have the limit that you can increase the levy by councilmatic action is 1%. If it wasn't 1%, then there's a whole lot of extra steps you'd have to do, but we don't need to worry about those this year. Here's the distribution. We love the dollar. Based on 21 tax information, the county keeps just barely over 9 cents per dollar of the property taxes collected. We keep a little over 2 cents of Medic 1, a little over 4 cents for roads. Conservation futures is a fraction of a cent. And the bulk of property tax money goes to the state and local schools.
Can I ask about that? So since ours has the lid and other pieces of this do not, our chunk of this dollar keeps shrinking, right? Because I think when I joined the board, it was more like 9.5 or 9.8, and now it's 9.05.
When I joined the county in 2010, it was 11 cents.
Yeah, so it's continually going to be squeezed until the laws change to equalize the
growth rates.
between jurisdictions.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Here's how it's calculated. The levy is not as simple as a set rate based on the value of your property. We go through this huge calculation to figure out what the levy is. And I've tried to kind of boil it down to only the essential steps. So you take last year's highest lawful levy, that excludes refunds, and you multiply that by 1%. This is the 1% increase. And so that this year for the general fund, this example is general fund, but we do it for all 4 of the property tax jurisdictions in the county, and other jurisdictions are doing the same thing. So you get your 1% number. Then you calculate the value of new construction, and the assessor has said at this point, new construction value in the county is 886 million. $375,429. It's a very precise number. And you multiply that by last year's levy rate, which was 0.98 cents, rounded. So we get to add to the levy the amount of $868,000. Then we can take the increase in the value of state-owned property in our county. Only state-owned property this year decreased in value. It didn't increase in value, and you'd have to ask the state why that was, but that's what they reported to us. So we don't get an increase in the levy because there was not an increase in value. Fortunately, we don't have to reduce the levy, but there's no increase either.
Everyone else's property grew in value but the state's?
That's exactly right.
Ours grew by some astronomical, like, record amount that we had to have a special briefing from the assessor about why it wasn't an error in the number, but the state's property didn't.
Thank you. That is my reaction as well, and that is exactly what we see. So that was the report. Then that gets us to the highest lawful levy. The treasurer reports to us the amount of refunds refunded in this year, and we can collect those on a broader basis next year. Those get added in. So we have a normal regular levy of $45,023,989. So it went up about 1.5 million, roughly. That's how the levies are calculated. There are a few extra steps in the general fund. And we've talked about the veterans levy. The veterans levy is a fixed amount, 0.01125 cents per thousand. You take that amount, multiply it by the total assessed value in the county, which the treasurer, not the treasurer, the auditor reported is just under $59 billion total county value. So you multiply that out and you subtract that from the levy that goes to the general fund. We do the same for mental health services. They have a fixed levy amount of 0.025 cents per thousand, and we will subtract almost $1.5 million that goes to the public health fund. Then, so the new amount after you take out the earmarks is 42.8 million, and to that, we add the road levy shift, which the board has set this year at $2,250,000, and that's $250,000 less than last year. So the total levy is $45,101,309. And then to get to the amount that each taxpayer pays, you back into a rate by dividing that amount by the assessed value in the county. So our new levy rate is, this might not be the right rate, but it says, oh, it is the right rate. 75, just over 75 cents per thousand. It had been 98 cents and it's now 75 cents per thousand
Had been 98 when?
this year.
Oh, in 1 year.
And next year, it's 75 cents. Yes, it is going down that much. That's after you add the road levy shift and back out the earmarks. So here's how we calculate the levy resolution. You want to go back to that?
No, I just want to say, I should have said this up front, but it's like, it's taken me, a number of years literally to get familiar with this terminology. And so folks who might be just listening, the word levy is not a word that ordinary people use very much. And and we often say levy rate, and I think people confuse levy rate and levy as if they're the same thing. And I think it's worth clarifying that levy is the total amount. It's the total. What you're doing is you're calculating a total amount of dollars that the county can collect, and then you back into the rate by then saying, going through that calculation of the assessed value. But what the limitation is on this levy of total dollars, and that's the tax levy.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything. The citizens don't care what the levy is. I mean, they do indirectly, but not directly. They care that how then that's required to be used to back into a rate that then applies to their valuation on their property.
Right. And I also had provided a handout that is not part of this presentation. Did that get printed and given to the board, that extra handout that I sent to you this morning along with the presentation? So I have a handout for you that shows for many years, I think going back to 2001, the total assessed value, the levy rate, and the levy. And you can plainly see that even though, like for instance, this year, total assessed value went up 27%. And on the assessor's website, there's a statement that the average home value went up 20%. Our tax levy went up 2%. So it does not increase, the amount the county collects does not increase at the same rate as the the assessed values.
Property
and
owners pay more than 2% because of that dollar.
All the rest of
Because
the,
the state parts are not subject to the same limit, but as to the piece that we get, they're not paying 20%.
no, they're
The
not.
county, they're paying 2%
That's right. So,
over a period of time.
yes. So I'm going to skip the resolution. This is just an explanation why the resolution doesn't say 1%. It too is a little complicated and you have to back into these numbers. But I want to move on to this graphic that is, it's a graphic representation of the handout that you just got. It shows that while the property values for the levy increase at, shows this upward trend here, especially in current years, recent years. At that, when the values increase, the rate decreases, almost a mirror image, even though the property tax levy in total goes up. So this is not intuitive whatsoever. And when we look at what the impact is on an individual property owner,
Robin,
go ahead.
Mr. Edwards has a question.
Go ahead.
Robin, is it still a fact that we're the only state in the United States that collects taxes and assesses taxes this way?
You know, I can't say for certain that we're the only state that does it this way, but I don't know of any others personally that do.
Commissioner, I don't know if we capture your question. Would you have your microphone on? You may want
My
to,
question was,
can you turn it on, please?
yeah, or can you hear me?
Thank you, sir.
Are we the only state that you're aware of that does their taxes this way?
Other states that I know have what citizens are more accustomed to when you talk about a school levy or what you see with the veterans levy, where there's a fixed levy amount that's set. And when your property values go up, the amount you pay in goes up at a similar rate or percentage. And that is not how, obviously, we back into the numbers. I'm not aware of any other state that does this.
Okay, thank you.
That's not to say there's not. Other states may have some other convoluted way, but ours is definitely complex. To take a look, though, at what this might mean, just talking about the county general fund to the average homeowner. These are the average home values. I got them off Redfin for June of each year, going back to 2017. You see that the home values have increased substantially.
Next slide.
Thank you. The rate goes down. It continues to drop. And this levy rate of 78874, it includes the earmarks for veterans and mental health. That's why it's a little higher than the 75 cents we were just looking at. The general fund share of the property tax for the average home, average valued home, actually goes down in 2023 because overall the overall assessed value countywide went up by 27%, and you are limited to 1% plus new construction. So it actually will be less that the average taxpayer pays to the county that goes to the general fund, even though overall the levy increased.
And that's because 90% of what is collected goes elsewhere.
Elsewhere. Right. Your overall tax bill, I do not doubt the overall property owner's tax bills
Just to
are
make sure
going
this,
up.
they capture your question.
90% of that tax dollar goes elsewhere that is
Right.
collected by, and that is paid by the citizens of the county.
That's right.
Thank you.
The share that the county gets for the general fund from an individual taxpayer is going down. And in 2023, I raised the value of an individual home by 20% based solely on the information that was on the assessor's website.
But in 2021 to 2022, value went up, but the tax went up. So why does it reverse itself in 2023?
Because the total assessed value for the whole county, where we backed into that rate, didn't jump by such an extreme degree.
Oh, so you're saying single-family residences went up, but that wasn't a reflection of all property?
Right.
It wasn't, it was at a higher rate.
It's complicated, but this is, and I hate to say that because I mean, I've been looking for years on a way to break this down into something simple, and I haven't found a way yet. It's just a factor of the math. The whole thing is based on mathematical equations. It's not just your value, the property, your value went up, so you pay more.
And I believe the overall valuation of all the county went from just about 42 billion to 65 billion.
Just under 60 billion.
Yeah,
That's correct.
and that's the reflection of the levy rate goes down as well.
That's exactly right. And that's what's on the handout that the board has.
So I want to do a time check really quick so we can get to public comment. Commissioners, if we can save questions or follow-up questions until after public
almost-
comment, so Robin can finish her presentation.
We're almost done. So next slide is just to tell you that your option for actions is, we ask for your consideration to increase the property tax. Staff recommendation is to increase it by the full 1%. That is what we've prepared in the budget, and we've assumed the full 1% both in the budget and in the resolutions that we've prepared for your consideration. But you don't have to raise it the full 1%. And then on the 15th, we will ask you to certify the levies. And on that'll happen on next Tuesday on the 13th, and then on the 16th, adopt the resolution that actually raises the property tax. So
But the
that's the actions.
The model you've shown us in this presentation has embedded the decision to raise the 1%.
The full 1%.
And if we didn't do that, we would see a corresponding
That's correct.
change in position.
And we ask that you do that for the Medic One portion that is not subject to lid lift, the general fund, the road fund, and for conservation futures. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have or open up to public comment.
Okay, Mr. Edwards?
Robin, if we were to calculate individually for our own situation, and we talk about inflation, if we were to calculate our own situation individually and try to figure out inflation and the effect it's had on, let's say, our 401k retirement fund or something. So if inflation is, I don't know what it is so far this year, is at 9%, I think, something like that.
Like that.
But last year it was 6 or 7%, I don't know what it was, but so say it's a total of 15% that basically we or individuals have lost. I'm just going to use a retirement fund. I hope people have one. They've lost about 15% value over the last 2 years. And when inflation goes down, we never do make that up. As far as I know, it doesn't ever go the other way. So
It does.
it does go the other way once
Yeah,
in a
we've
while?
seen negative inflation in the last decade,
Oh,
a few
so
times.
there's hope yet? Is what you're telling me?
It doesn't do very often. Usually you see increases in inflation. Prices go up. And as far as people's individual retirement accounts, not only do I hope they have one, I hope they've made wise investments.
Yeah.
Because, yes, it's going up tremendously.
Oh, yeah. Okay, just wondering. It was a financial question. I thought I might as well ask you that because I'm stumped on this whole, I would hate to go to the local Rotary Club and try to give an explanation of
Yeah.
how we handle their taxes. Thank you.
Questions? No. Okay, with that, we'll move on to public testimony. We don't have anyone in the boardroom. We have someone online. John Pettit, you have 4 minutes, sir.
Thank you. You're going to hear something from me that you probably thought you'd never hear. I'm suggesting that you do the full 1%. But I'm also suggesting that, as I've talked about before, the roads and the cost of maintaining the roads is only going up faster and faster. It's costing more money to repair them. So every time you take money away from the roads, it's kind of like there's this building on the hill there. We use it for a courthouse, and we neglected taking good care of it for many, many, many years. It caused deferred maintenance. It caused a situation that it no longer could have been done on the simple process, but instead we now are faced with a very bad situation of what needs to be done to upgrade it. Now, if you increase the 1%, but then I'm going to suggest right now, I've been hearing over and over and over, oh, we have so much money. We have so much money. When is there ever going to be a better time to be able to not take a levy shift? Nothing says you can't start a levy shift again later at a different date, but every dollar that we don't have is that much more road that we're not maintaining. And even though it may seem like, well, it's only another 20 miles, well, guess what? That's 20 miles. And when you are already at well below 50% of where you should be, that 20 miles accumulates over years. So last year you did 42 miles of maintenance. Maybe this year you're going to do 20 miles worth of actual seal of a surface, and then maybe you're going to put some tar over some cracks for another 20 miles. That doesn't really give it the level of maintenance that should be happening with the roads. So if you in fact have this high balance, then I think that would be an important thing to do is eliminate the levy shift. I'd eliminate both the levy shift and the other aspect that would go to the sheriff's office in order to give a boost to the roads. Now, the other concern I have is sometimes our figures, our forecasts haven't always been super accurate. A few weeks ago, I was observing a meeting in which Assistant County Manager Campbell stated that REIT was running considerably behind the level, and therefore it wouldn't be possible to do any work on the Mottman complex. And then today I hear, oh no, REIT is running at the proper level right now, anticipated level. I don't know what the real answer is, but I only expect the truth, and the truth can't be both answers. So I think you need to make sure that you're getting all the truth.
30
Sales
seconds,
tax-
sir. 30 seconds.
Thank you. Sales tax was overestimated for this past year. Granted, you're adjusting it. REIT clearly has been overestimated. You decided to issue bonds subject to paying the REIT fees because you knew you were going to have so much coming in. But my first concern is let's get the roads back being funded with the taxes that were described and made specifically for them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I don't have anybody else on
Okay.
line.
So with that, commissioners, any further questions? Comments?
No.
No further questions by me, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, that, we will conclude this public hearing, and we'll go ahead and jump right into our next one. It is 5 PM. And our next public hearing is to consider increases to Thurston County water and sewer utility rates. And Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager, here to present on this matter.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager with Public Works. I also have with me Public Works Director Jennifer Walker and Assistant Director Karen Weiss to back me up. To provide some background on this, Thurston County Code Section 1512 authorizes the Board of County Commissioners to set water and sewer rates and charges for the county by resolution and provides for periodic adjustments to the rates, charges, and fees for the county's water and sewer utilities. The cost of operating utilities increases every year due to escalating costs in repairs, supplies, power, staffing, benefits, and all elements of running the systems, including investment in needed infrastructure. On July 14th, 2022, Public Works briefed the board regarding the key advantages of consolidation of the utilities based on a comprehensive consultant analysis. Advantages include shared planning and capital prioritization, economies of scale through rate blending, simplification of accounting, administration, and utility billing, improved financial stability, and risk reduction. Public Works is moving forward with the steps required for consolidation of the utilities, which include development of a transition plan, public outreach on utility consolidation, fund and budget development and adoption, and code updates and resolution forming the combined utilities. As implementation of the consolidated utilities will take several months to complete, 2023 rate increases are needed within specific utilities to cover operational cost increases only. The proposed rate increases include a 5% increase in water rates and 4.25% increase in sewer rates for customers of the Boston Harbor utilities. A 5% increase in water and sewer rates for customers of the Tamashan utilities, and a 5% increase in sewer rates for customers of the Olympic View utility. Both the Boston Harbor and Tamashan Utility Advisory Committees have been briefed on the recommended adjustments, and additionally, a communication and outreach plan was implemented that included a web page and utility bill inserts. And with that, I would answer any questions you may have.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I really don't have any questions because we've been over this quite a bit over this past 6 months. So I just want the public to know that this isn't the first time we're hearing about this. Thank you for your presentation, Tim.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer, questions?
You mentioned the advisory committees having been briefed. Do they express, I mean, some of our committees will say we support this or not. Did they take a position about it?
Yeah, no one is happy to see rate increases, but the advisory committees, many of which are retired utility folks themselves, certainly understand the need and the direction that we're going with consolidation. So I would say they are in support of the rate increases.
Under duress, feeling like they're in support.
One other thing possibly. Could you give us just a brief history, very brief, why we're in the utility business in the first place? So the public knows this isn't an endeavor that the county went out and solicited. we're here for a reason, and maybe the public, I think, would appreciate that. If could you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very brief and very generally, three of the four communities that we served were taken over by the county as a mandate of the state. These smaller systems were either failing financially or operationally or both. And the remedy for that in the state's view is for the county to take those over. So those utilities were taken over, some of those as early as the late 1980s, and we've been managing them ever since.
And I might add, they were, at least to some degree, failing when we took them over, and we've been trying to bring them up to speed ever since then, is my understanding of the county's role.
That's accurate and a great point.
Thank you.
My questions, Tim, are, I have questions in regards to kind of rate increases last year. We went through this public hearing similar to what we're doing now, right? And this seems like an additional really extra bump than what we did even last year. So I'm wondering kind of why we're here and kind of like, you know, why is it even more than kind of what we did last year?
Yeah, no, great question, and Commissioner Edwards hit it on the head. We have been chasing these utilities and trying to put them in a better position financially. The rate increases that you're seeing now are the result of a comprehensive rate study that was done by our consultant FCS earlier this year. And they are, these rate increases do not even get us to the point where we are to our goal of having rate-funded capital within these programs. They are covering operational increases only. And they're not across the board. You'll notice that Grand Mound doesn't have increases. So we are keeping up with those inflationary costs related to the operation of the utilities only. The good news is that as we move towards consolidation, the projections that we have looking out to a fully blended rate structure, which would occur, I believe, in 2028. The utilities that are impacted the most here, Tamashan and Boston Harbor, would actually see decreases in their rates that are quite significant. I think the rate decrease for Tamashan in the sewer utility by 2028 is about 55% over what they would be paying on a non-consolidated utility. So there is good news coming in, and the utilities are, I would say, well-positioned with the board's support.
So Commissioner Menzer kind of hit my next question in regards to the feedback from, you know, but have we gotten feedback from any other resident who will be affected by these rate changes? Have we, you know, did they attend those meetings? Did they write in comment or anything like that?
Yeah, great question. We've had a web page available similar to the same process that we took last year when we did rate increases. We develop a rate page, a rate increase web page, and include flyers that go out in the utility billings to all of our customers. As of today, I don't believe we received any comments.
I believe you received one comment this morning from the Commissioner's office, and I shared that with Public Works, so you may want
That
to
is
acknowledge
correct.
that.
I saw that this morning.
And this provided a citizen provided a comparison to other jurisdictions in terms of the utility rates. Just like to acknowledge that we, in fact, received that public comment.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any additional questions, comments? So with that, are we ready to go into public testimony? If so, there's No one in the boardroom, and we do have someone via Zoom, so I will call John Pettit.
Yes, Commissioners, John Pettit, East Olympia. And I don't personally pay either your water or your sewer rates. But I did think it's important for you to recognize that these people out there that are paying, they have expectation at some point they're going to get what would be a reasonable price or a comparable price to where that same exact type of utility is provided elsewhere. From looking at the rates that are talked about, the sewer rate on the sheet at 152.10 for Tamashan, you may have seen I had a comparable rate here showing list of a whole bunch of variety of all cities and different places throughout. And well, you're almost $20 higher per month than the highest rate that's listed. I appreciate the idea that maybe you're trying to find a way to do better management. I appreciate that you're wanting to consolidate. I appreciate the fact that the county in the past apparently needed to step in to help supply the services that needed to be done in order to continue a good, safe environment. But I cannot emphasize enough that part of the reasons why I object is I have a funny way I think in terms of what is that extra $10 or $15 a month? Well, to many of the people, that amounts to about a half an hour to an hour's worth of their labor during a month. In other words, it's like sucking up another one. They put in an hour of work and that extra increase just sucked up another hour of their wages that they want to live and feed their family with. And while I appreciate all of those things, that is part of why REIT exists, is to be able to help make investments in different services as necessary. And I can only encourage you, again, is, you know what, bite the bullet a little bit. If you need to come up with other means to help through more REIT contribution for upgrading facilities, look at that. But don't raise their rates every year. I mean, it's got to be extremely painful. And there's some people that they're going to have to choose whether they pay their rates or whether they put some food on the table. And that goes right on your shoulders. There's other funds available for helping improve the district. That's what REIT's for. I'm gonna plead that you do not increase the rates for these funds. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have anybody else on Zoom, Madam Chair, so I believe that concludes the public testimony for this public hearing.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions from commissioners?
No follow-up questions. Thank you.
Okay, hearing none, it is 5:13. We will go ahead
And then recess until 6.
recess until 6 p.m., where we will be taking open public testimony. So anything you would like to comment on from the past 2 days, please join us at 6 p.m.